Apparently, Robert Stroud was really a very nasty man, and I believe even some of his contributions to ornithology are disputed. Nevertheless, this is a very well shot and directed film, very ably performed film. Some of the former inmates who were incarcerated with Robert Stroud claim that Burt Lancaster owes them an apology. This isn't considered a particularly accurate film to its subject. Nevertheless, what can be admired is, I don't know, the tenacity at executing it. It's an inferior production, despite its presumably a higher budget than Frankenheimer's prime mentor, Sidney Lumet, released in '64, The Pawnbroker, starring Rod Steiger, which I think most of us could agree. Just black and white film, sort of introspective drama, lesser budgeted yet far superior to this film, Birdman of Alcatraz, and much shorter. This film is nearly 3 hours long. It does not need to be. Birdman of Alcatraz, much like All Fall Down of the same year, but also directed by Frankenheimer, obviously, it's a justification for the onslaught of the new wave, the new Hollywood era later in that decade, and of course throughout the 1970s. I think films like Birdman of Alcatraz and All Fall Down are such didactic, forced English class dramas. We needed to move on from this era and on toward invoking more so the transformative nature of the medium and how we could use these to both transform how our consciousness and also the world around us. It's more interesting than that kind of sandwich and beers sort of suburban eternal utopia, whatever, like that kind of. I think there was that era tried to come again during the 2000s, the IMDb top 250 era, when we just watched these kind of exalted classics until the end of time. History's over, we just sit back on the couch and watch movies for the rest of time, and everything's crap now because Hollywood VFX, Michael Bay, Transformers, Pokemon, etc. Actually, it's a good thing that the edgier sort of vanguard era of the Nouvelle Vague, and then spreading to America in the New Hollywood epoch, leading ultimately to the kind of blockbuster indulgence of your Star Warses, right down to the Jurassic Parks, to the Toy Story 2s, to the Mad Max Fury Roads, to the Avatar 2s. I actually think this, to Zack Snyder's Justice League, but this is the valid continuation of cinema, I think. I mean, it's an interesting strain. We still have a fascinating artists in our Naomi Kawase, Pictopong Racefacles, Michael Haneke, Cronenberg. That art house circuit still exists and sometimes is still interesting. Lav Diaz was getting a bit shaky there with that wonky musical thing, but all the same, Zhang Lu exists, possibly the premier artist of our time. He's the Michael Snow of this century. And we had to think of subjects more interesting to discuss than Birdman of Alcatraz, because it is, of course, Birdman of Alcatraz by John Frankenheimer, one of Frankenheimer's best-known films, and frankly, one of his... Well, I claimed this and All Fall Down were lesser films. There are plenty of lesser Frankenheimer films, actually. Well, maybe 7 or so. Of the ones we will be discussing on FOTD, these are quite plausibly the 2 weaker of them, dare I say. Even if we include, though not necessarily, the Playhouse 90 episodes. Anyway, let's move on to more interesting territory, shall we?